Albert Breer joins me now, senior reporter, Monday Morning Quarterback. He knows the Patriots. I can't. People that have never been random don't suddenly get random. And listen, stock pickers occasionally sell stock to avoid capital gains.
Yeah.
Like they didn't buy the stock to sell it. I mean, now I got 7 players opting out. Well, come on, Albert. Something's going on, right?
I don't think that look, they have a plan for this year. There's no question about that. They're carrying $24 million in dead cap this year. They've only got $3 million in cash invested in quarterbacks on their roster. This was always going to be a clear of the next year because of where they were contractually with a lot of their guys. And of course, where Tom Brady was in his career. That said, I don't think they planned for these opt-outs. I think the opt-outs, I don't think those are random either. I think that's actually just sort of a product of the guys that they've had on their roster. Smart, responsible, well-off, accomplished pros. And you can look at the guys. Dante Hightower, in his 30s, has a newborn, has 3 rings, has taken care of his money. Patrick Chung, in his 30s, has a baby on the way, has 3 rings, has taken care of his money. These guys have the freedom to make those sorts of decisions. They've got the intelligence to look at what's happening in our country. And I think for a lot of these guys, the Patriots, with a lot of these guys, the Patriots sort of become a victim of their own success. These guys look at it and say, you know what, I made my money. I got my rings. Do I really want to jump through all the hoops that 2020 is going to present for me? You know what? I'll take the year off.
All right. That's how you see it. Okay, fine. All right. So we all know Aaron Rodgers is great. To me, he's always been a tad passive-aggressive. Yesterday, he went aggressive, and I love it. He basically talked about the gigantic elephant in the room, which is I've had collarbone surgeries, I'm old, I'm expensive, and the Packers moved up in the first round to get a quarterback. What did you take away from his comments he made yesterday, which is I'm not bitter, I know the end's coming in Green Bay, I'm probably not going to finish here.
How much do you remember about the summer of 2008, Colin? Like, do you remember, Brett Favre actually showed up that summer to Packers camp? A lot of people don't remember that. Before he was traded to the Jets, he actually showed up, and the Packers, in effect, kicked him out. And so Aaron Rodgers was the other guy in that equation when you had the older, expensive quarterback who was very, very accomplished. So he knows what this equation is, and he's sensitive to it. Every player is a product of their own experiences. So I think that's a part of all of this. I think the other part of it, it's just how the Packers handled it before the draft. I think it would have been very easy for Matt LaFleur or Brian Gutekunst to get on this phone and say, listen, there's this kid from Utah State. We really like him. There's a few receivers we like too. But if Jordan Love falls into the area where we may take him and the receivers that we like are gone, there's a chance this happens. So I think that if the Packers had sort of gotten in front of this a little bit, even if it was just a day or two before the draft, they probably would have avoided a little bit of this awkwardness with Aaron Rodgers, because I do think Rodgers' willingness to come out and say some of these things is a product of the way it was handled in April.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I've always argued if the Packers would have just taken a receiver with the second pick, you could have appeased Aaron a little, and then you can go get your blocking tight end and your interior lineman. But to draft a quarterback and then go get a running back who was kind of a reach, the messaging from the front office to Aaron is, we don't really, you are not really a guy that we're worried about asking you for favors or for draft picks. So I didn't like that either, and I think your point's a really good one. So it's funny this week. Carson Wentz is not in the NFL.com top 100 voted by the players. Not in the top 100. And then there was 50 executives. Mike Sando does this for The Athletic. He talks to 50 executives every year. He does tiers of quarterbacks, and Wentz is in the bottom of tier 2, barely ahead of Phillip Rivers. I don't get it. Obviously, I have a blind spot for the kid. Are you surprised by that?
Well, I think it's just the way NFL people look at these guys and the way they assess guys. And I've had a lot of executives use that old cliche: the best ability is durability, the best ability is availability. And really, that's been the knock on Carson Wentz over the last few years. And you can correlate it with what happened in college. He had a lot of injury issues his last year at North Dakota State. And so I think a piece of this has to do with his ability to stay in the field. Look, everybody saw what he did in 2017. He may have been the MVP of the league before he tore his ACL. But we've seen the Eagles succeed without him, so that's a part of it. We've seen an inability to stay healthy. Last year, he finally gets through 16 games, And then lo and behold, he gets hurt in the playoffs. And so, I mean, look, some of this is just rotten luck, but there's another part of this where he plays a certain way, his body hasn't held up. And if these sorts of things are happening when you're 24, 25, 26 years old, there becomes the assumption that they're going to keep happening. And so, we've seen even the biggest quarterbacks fall victim to this style of play before. Cam Newton, 270 pounds, as big a man as you'll ever see at the position. He couldn't stay healthy playing that way. And so I think part of it on Carson is on Carson Wentz now to adjust his style of play. But I think so much of this, Colin, relates back to the way that NFL people look at these guys, and it's different the way than the public looks at these guys. NFL people look at it and say to themselves, durability is part of the package with every single player.
So I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I try not to root for teams, but it makes me happy that Seattle and Russell Wilson have found success for a franchise that, been around forever and didn't win anything big. But I thought the move to get Jamal Adams felt a little desperate. And I think, and this is my big knock on Seattle, that they've had a lot of first-round whiffs. The offensive line is now rated 28th by Pro Football Focus. The defensive line is rated 32nd by Pro Football Focus. And it feels like, let's bring in Jamal Adams. It's a big swing, and he can cover up some of our holes. I don't think they need safety help like they need O-line and D-line help. But I thought it felt kind of desperate giving that up for Jamal Adams. What say you?
I say this is a reach for their identity when they were at the top of the league, and I having talked to a couple people there over the weekend, they really felt like they're very, very close to having the sort of secondary that they had in 2013 and 14 and 15 with some of the young guys that they've developed there, guys like Shaquille Griffin and Trey Flowers, Marquise Blair going into his second year now. They trade for Quandre Diggs. And so they really felt like they were very, very close in the secondary to having what they've had in the glory years, which was the key to everything back then. And so what does Jamal Adams bring? The way that they look at it in that building, he's a smaller, more versatile version of Cam Chancellor on several different fronts. He brings a sort of physical presence that you want. He's a tone setter in the secondary, and he's an alpha for that room. And so they really felt like a lot of what they were as a program could be reestablished by getting Jamal Adams into the building. And they never felt like they were going to be able to get somebody like that in the draft. And if you look at the draft chart, and this is really interesting, Colin, go and do the math. If you say that the Seahawks are going to have around the 25th pick over the next 2 years, and you add up all of the numbers there with the draft value chart, what you'll find is it comes out to almost exactly what the 6th pick would cost, which is what Jamal Adams was. So they didn't feel like they were going to be able to find this sort of player either in the draft or free agency. They were going to get one of these guys. The rare opportunity had to present itself via trade, and there he was for them.
Good stuff. A lot of clarity with Albert Breer today. Went to Ohio State. I did not know that before I saw that. Go Buckeyes. I'm sure all the Michigan fans watching the show love that as well. Albert, it's a pleasure talking to you again. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Colin.
Download the all-new Fox Sports app now.